I have just won in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Georgia in a defamation lawsuit against CNN that I filed 3 years ago. Ed Carnes, circuit judge concurring, writes this, quote, "If you stay on the bench long enough, you see a lot of things. Still, I never thought I'd see a major news organization downplaying the importance of telling the truth in its broadcasts. But that is what CNN has done in this case. Through its lawyers, CNN has argued this court to adopt the position that under the law, it is no worse for a news organization to spread or promote misinformation than to truthfully disclose a person's address in a broadcast. We had to sue CNN. I had to go to the federal judge in Georgia. The federal judge had to rule against me. Not sure how that worked. Then I had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not $1 million, going to the 11th Circuit, wait 2 years, and get this judgment in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. We have a victory in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. In 2021, Ana Cabrera on CNN saying that my Twitter account was then suspended for, quote, promoting misinformation.
We're starting to see companies crack down to try to stop the spread of misinformation and to hold some people who are spreading it accountable. Brian, for example, Twitter has suspended the account of Project Veritas, a conservative activist organization. At least that's how they couch themselves.
But CNN had contradicted themselves. They reported that I was suspended for violations of policies, including prohibiting sharing of people's private information. We had talked about how that was a direct contradiction. Recall that we had done this story where we went to the community where the Facebook vice president lived, and we failed to blur the number on his lamppost. But even CNN goes to people's homes and does local doorstops. Local news reporters do that all the time, and often they don't blur the number on the lamppost or the number on the house. In fact, CNN's Drew Griffin actually went to this home of this innocent lady in Florida, to her trailer home, and he didn't blur any numbers on the home. So we filed this lawsuit, and CNN files what's called a motion to dismiss in federal court in Georgia. And in that motion, CNN argues there is no difference between promoting misinformation and failing to blur a number on a lamppost. Then the federal judge dismisses the lawsuit using all types of mental gymnastics. Now I'm going to go back and read a quote from this federal judge's order dismissing our lawsuit. This is pretty absurd. Quote, "While Project Veritas asserts that CNN statements implying that Project Veritas was banned from Twitter for spreading misinformation maligns its journalistic integrity," ooh, he's calling us journalists, "the pleaded truth of being accused of violating a policy aimed at protecting individuals from coming to physical harm as a result of their information being shared similarly maligns a journalist's professional reputation. While there is some difference between violating a policy by providing incorrect or misleading information and violating a policy by truthfully providing someone's private information," well, the judge is drawing a difference there, quote, "the distinction is not enough to make this statement at issue actionable, as both violations are similarly damaging to the journalist's reputation," unquote. I then made the difficult decision to spend a lot of money on attorneys, filing a huge brief in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals trying to overturn what that federal judge did. From this 11th Circuit Court of Appeals brief, quote, "Ana Cabrera told CNN's national television audience that Twitter had suspended Veritas for publishing and promoting misinformation. But in reality, Twitter had not suspended Veritas for publishing or promoting misinformation. Rather, as Cabrera and CNN had reported just 4 days earlier, Twitter had suspended Veritas for a decidedly different reason, for publishing truthful but supposedly private information. Cabrera thus accused Veritas of an act of misconduct, publishing false information when Veritas had in fact engaged in a completely different act by publishing truthful but supposedly private information. Under a straightforward application of settled law, Cabrera's statement was thus not substantially true, and the district court erred in holding otherwise." That's from page 23 to 24 of this appellate brief that we filed just a few weeks ago in June of 2022. And now, 2 years later, we have a decision from the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. In the 11th Circuit, we next determine whether Veritas, as a public figure, plausibly alleged that Cabrera published the alleged defamatory statements with actual malice. Remember, in defamation, because I'm a public figure, I have to prove actual malice. That means I must prove that the person knew they were lying about me. It's a very difficult standard to get above. The Circuit Court, writing in the 11th Circuit, although the District Court, that's the federal judge that ruled against us, did not reach the issue of actual malice, Veritas argues that it plausibly alleged actual malice and that its defamation claim should proceed. We agree with Veritas. The 11th Circuit goes on. Regardless, we need not decide today whether this case imparts a material falsity requirement that considers reputational harm into the First Amendment context, because we conclude that Veritas has plausibly alleged that Cabrera's statements were not only false, but materially false. And it is at least plausible that Cabrera's statements malign Veritas' reputation. Then, Ed Carnes, circuit judge concurring, writes this, quote, "If you stay on the bench long enough, you see a lot of things. Still, I never thought I'd see a major news organization downplaying the importance of telling the truth in its broadcasts. But that is what CNN has done in this case. Through its lawyers, CNN has argued this court to adopt the position that under the law, it is no worse for a news organization to spread or promote misinformation than to truthfully disclose a person's address in a broadcast. We had to sue CNN. I had to go to the federal judge in Georgia. The federal judge had to rule against me. Not sure how that worked. Then I had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not $1 million, going to the 11th Circuit, wait 2 years, and get this judgment in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. We have a victory in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. That's the good news. And now, here's the bad news. Project Veritas fired me in part, at least from what they've stated, because I had spent too much money on lawyers. I made difficult decisions in courts of law. I traveled around the country taking all types of automobiles and planes and trains in order to meet with donors to raise the hundreds of thousands, the millions of dollars needed to make those difficult decisions. Project Veritas Corporation fires me, the chairman, the CEO, and founder, in part for doing the very thing that Project Veritas is now taking a victory lap over. You can't make this stuff up. Oh, and by the way, Project Veritas is still suing me, suggesting that it was wrong for me to do the things that they are now taking a victory lap over me doing. And we intend to go to jury verdict in that lawsuit. Those depositions are now ongoing. But you have to wonder about the enemy, not that's external. And by the way, this is pretty bad. CNN, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, saying that it's wild for a news organization to suggest that promoting misinformation is the same as disclosing a person's address. That's pretty bad. But this is even worse in this country, that they would do this. And I implore you, ask them why they are still exhausting your donor resources to shut me up and shut me down. It's not right. Filing these lawsuits were very difficult. Going to jury verdict in the Democracy Partners case, extraordinarily difficult. Filing the appeals, extremely difficult decisions that were put on my desk at the time. People ask me, James O'Keefe, do you really want to do this? It's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. James O'Keefe, you're going to have to travel around the United States and raise that money. Nights in hotel rooms away from your loved ones, 100-hour work weeks, spending time in the back of an automobile, in the car, in the airports, constantly raising those funds. We're talking millions of dollars to pay libel attorneys and other lawyers to make stuff like this happen. And what does Project Veritas do? They fire the guy that raises all the money. And forgive me for my passion, but when you have people doing a victory lap over a hard decision that they were against, you have to start asking the question about who the actual enemy is. Is the enemy the news media? Perhaps. Is it wrong for CNN to say things like they did, the circuit judge pointed out? Perhaps. But what is even worse? Be careful who you surround yourself with. This is a victory for the First Amendment. This is a victory against fake news. Rarely do you see a circuit court do stuff like this. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, it's a victory. Will they actually proceed? We'll see. I'm not sure who or how they're going to raise the money to pay all these lawyers without getting some black cars.